All right, so now you know how to do a sun path diagram. You know how to do a windrows, which is important, and you know how to use them for design. But I'm sure most of you know at this point how to kind of draw or simulate shadow in a drawing. Am I right? No, not many of you. Well, okay. So anyway, what you're going to realize is like architectural representations often use shadow because shadow is so important to the space that you're experiencing. So you've got sort of your 3D view that you all know how to do that in Rhino pretty simply. But you can also have like plan views that are going to be drawn, which I thought there was one on here that was a plan view that showed it a second ago, and now it's gone. That's not it. Okay, something like this, drawing plan view shadows and stuff. It's a really important part of architectural representation. Let's see if we do architectural shadow drawing. It's probably all going to be perspective and stuff. Okay, well, there you go. So this is just kind of projecting a shadow sort of like, on a particular drawing. But what we can do with the Ladybug shadow analysis is something very similar. And I think it's often a little better because you can export it to render, right? So you can export it to like a vector sort of overlay, not just a rendered element. Does that make sense what I mean by that? Okay, do you know the difference between vector and raster?
Yeah, line drawing and then like shadow.
Those of you who took my rendering class know.
When did you teach rendering?
Last semester. Precisely. There you go. Painting with pixels. So that means like you zoom in on it and you can see the little squares, and then you can change that square, and then it makes up another picture, right? You know that's what pictures are made of. And then there's drawing with vectors, which is actually the sort of mathematical line work that goes behind creating a volume that represents, like a line or a volume or something with thickness. So that's the difference. What's cool about what Ladybug does is it will project your shadows just like you would when you're doing the shaded viewport. I always forget which thing I have to click for that. Which one was it again? Rendered viewport. Where's my sun? Well, I don't have a surface. Anyway, it's going to create these shadows. And right now, if you zoom in on them, it looks like what? Right, it looks like pixels. That's because it is not a mathematically calculated object. I mean, it mathematically calculates it to get where a representation of shadows is going to go. So what we're going to create here is a shadow. So it's under number 7, and it's under shadow study. And it really only asks you for 2 simple things. It's going to ask you for a geometry that will cast shadows on each other, and then the sun vector. So this is like from your sun path component, where is your sun shining down on the building? So one thing that is important to note is that this geometry right now does not have a floor. So just like what I was showing you when I turned the shadow thing on, there was nothing for it to project down onto on the ground, so I couldn't show you that. So let's put just a quick surface down like that. And let's go to params, geometry. And in this case, we could either use brep or geometry. And actually, if I recall correctly, it doesn't like the geometry node, and I think you want brep. We can select the whole thing. So we're going to select multiple breps and just select that whole building. And I can actually turn this off. And I can, in theory, I can just hide all this too. Hide. And then I'm going to plug this into geometry. And then the other thing I'm going to need is the sun vector, which is up here. And I plug that in, and it should take a quick moment to calculate, and then you'll get a model output with meshes that represent the shadow information. any day now. Hmm? Yeah. Well, these take a while because the processors on these computers aren't that good. Neither are the graphics cards. Anyway, I'm going to pause this while it runs.